Always saying yes, relentless people-pleasing. Imagine someone who never says no. They always volunteer, agree, and help out, even when they're overwhelmed. On the surface, it looks like pure kindness. They're easygoing, helpful, and eager to pitch in. But psychologists warn this yes-man behavior can be a classic trauma coping mechanism. Experts call it the fawn response, a survival strategy where you literally mirror others' expectations to keep the peace. In effect, your nervous system is whispering, "Make them happy, and we'll stay safe." This likely started in childhood. If you grew up believing conflict or disappointment could be dangerous or lead to abandonment, you learned to please everyone. Studies confirm that people-pleasing often masks deep fear of rejection, with trauma survivors seeking safety by merging with others' wishes. In short, that endless sure and constant agreement feel helpful to others. But underneath, it may be keeping old wounds from flaring up. Constantly apologizing, excessive sorry syndrome. Next is the chronic apologizer, the person who says sorry for everything, even when nothing went wrong. At first, it seems polite and humble, making them come across as considerate. But experts see red flags. Frequent apologizing is often learned from early trauma. In certain families, children were blamed or gaslit endlessly, so the safest move became taking the blame to avoid punishment. Over time, saying "I'm sorry" becomes a reflex, an unconscious way to smooth things over and keep anger at bay. So when someone apologizes for others' mistakes or says sorry when it's not needed, it may have started as a defense, warding off a parent's rage or keeping the peace in a volatile environment. What feels humble and nice, everyone likes a polite person, can actually be a sign that they were trained to diffuse tension at their own expense. The perfectionist overachiever. Then there's the superachiever, the go-getter who never settles for less than perfect. Everyone admires the ambition, great grades, constant projects, impressive goals. But beneath the shine, this relentless drive often hides a trauma response. In vulnerable kids, unanswered cries for help can turn into a need to earn love by being flawless. In other words, doing everything perfectly feels safe. If I'm perfect, I won't get criticized or abandoned. Research confirms this. People who grew up with shame or neglect often equate mistakes with danger and push themselves to be flawless to avoid rejection. What looks like dedication and discipline is actually a coping tactic. This means that if you feel you're only worthy when you're over-delivering, it could be because you learned early on to use achievements as proof of your value and to keep trauma triggers at bay. Nonstop, caregiver. Fixer, the rescuer. This is the friend or family member who drops everything to care for others. Cooking meals, organizing, solving problems. People call this altruism, but trauma specialists identify it as a codependent pattern. It often starts in childhood, when inconsistent or neglectful caregiving taught you that your worth came from fixing someone's problems. Survivors of abuse can learn to repress their own needs and become overly dependent on helping others to feel valuable. They literally use caretaking to stay emotionally safe. If I make sure everyone else is okay, maybe they won't hurt or leave me. In practice, this looks like constant self-sacrifice and ignoring your own well-being. It's praised as selflessness. But if that urge comes from trauma, it's actually a survival response, keeping others happy to protect yourself. Research notes that codependency, putting others first, is a common symptom of trauma because trauma often rewires us to expect danger if we don't play the rescuer. The Peacekeeper, conflict avoider. Have you ever met someone who always keeps the conversation light, never argues, and even changes the subject when things get tense? To friends and bosses, they seem mature and calm. In reality, this constant peacekeeping is often a trauma response. Essentially, these people-pleasers are so afraid of conflict that they will do almost anything to avoid it. Fawning behavior is a safety strategy. You're extremely careful not to upset the person you fear, and you feel responsible for their emotions. In practice, that means smiling when you want to cry or agreeing to avoid an argument. It feels nice because you appear easy to get along with, but it's rooted in danger wiring. Childhood trauma can teach us that even a small disagreement might lead to big fallout. So the peacekeeper grows up learning, don't rock the boat, no matter what. Consequently, they'll avoid saying no, speaking up, or showing anger, which on the surface reads as gentle kindness, but inside is anxiety masking. Overly polite and agreeable. Similar to the Peacekeeper, this behavior involves always using polite phrases and never challenging anyone. These individuals might even have a fear of saying no, always inserting extra please and thank you. They're that person who never complains even if they're hurting or upset. Being excessively courteous can earn social praise. People say they're so nice. But psychologists flag it as a trauma hangover. Survivors who were abused or yelled at often become overly polite to their abusers. It's a survival strategy. If I always keep others happy with my agreeableness, maybe they won't hurt me. So the constant politeness, the agreement to anything you ask, is not just good manners. It's the memory of childhood training when pushback had consequences. In short, the person pleasing you see might really be avoiding danger, ignoring your own needs, self-sacrificing. Think of someone who never asks for help, even when overwhelmed, or who skips meals to take care of everyone else. It looks generous until you realize they never check in on themselves. Trauma can teach people to completely neglect their own needs, believing others' needs are always more urgent. Survivors often learn to satisfy emotional needs through others, repressing their own in the process. In practice, this looks like someone who goes hungry so others can eat, or who stays silent about their hurt so a friend stays calm. Socially, we commend this as selflessness, but it often comes from a fear. Maybe as a child your needs were ignored or punished, so you learned to ignore yourself to stay safe. Basically, if you grew up feeling unworthy, you might think the world only works if other people's problems are fixed. Hence you give and give, even when it hurts you, to keep relationships stable. Always the fixer, advice giver. This is a slight twist on caregiving. The person who always has a solution or steps in to solve someone's problem, without being asked. On the surface, they're reliable and competent. Friends often say, "Thank goodness you're here." But trauma can lurk behind this helpfulness. Constantly fixing things for others can come from codependency, a feeling that if you make everyone else all right, then you earn your place and safety. Trauma survivors often go above and beyond for others and feel their value lies in solving people's problems. In childhood, they may have held a household together. In adulthood, that automatic fix-it attitude stays on. It feels rewarding to help, but at its core, it's an anxious coping response, controlling the environment so no new threat surprises you. In other words, they do everything to keep others happy and avoid conflict, even at personal cost. Needing constant approval, validation. Some people seem to live off praise. They fish for compliments or post achievements online nonstop. At first, it might seem like confidence or ambition, but for many, it's the flip side of trauma. When you grow up not feeling enough, you learn to gauge your worth by others' reactions. Perfectionists and achievers often do this to counter deep-seated shame. They may feel empty until someone applauds their work or success. In plain terms, saying "good job" gives them a quick hit of safety they didn't get as kids. The pattern is subtle. Everyone likes a successful friend, but behind it often lies fear. Fear that if the compliments stop, maybe the support will too. It's a way of subconsciously ensuring you won't be abandoned. Keep collecting approval to stave off that old insecurity. The chameleon, always adapting to others. Picture someone who takes on a different personality depending on who they're with. Shy one-on-one, goofy with friends, or ultra-professional at work. It's easy to call that flexible or agreeable. Trauma specialists call it another form of fawning, mirroring. Essentially, you learn to become who others want you to be so that they don't turn on you. You start mirroring imagined expectations to feel safe. As a kid, if a parent had unpredictable moods, you might have learned to match their mood. Happy now. Great, me too. This reaction often becomes subconscious. Being chameleon-like looks kind. You get along with anyone. But it comes from a fear of standing out or being rejected for your true self. So the next time someone seems to always adjust to keep others comfortable, it might be trauma shaping their behavior. The smiling Stoic, hiding pain behind kindness. Then there are those who always have a smile, never burden others with their troubles. They might crack jokes under stress or switch topics when they're upset. To everyone else, they seem resilient and thoughtful, always putting on a brave face. In reality, this is often learned numbness from trauma. If showing fear or sadness as a child brought discomfort at best or punishment at worst, one learns to mask those feelings with pleasantness. Trauma can cause emotional shutdown, so people function smoothly on the surface while turning off their own distress inside. That forced cheerfulness or silence feels like a gift to others, but inside it's fear-based. They're protecting you and themselves from seeing how broken they really feel. It's not weakness to feel in that armor of kindness, but it started as a hidden survival tactic. Never complaining, bottling it up. This person never makes waves. If someone cuts them off in line or snaps at them, they just nod and walk away. Others admire their composure, but psychologists recognize it as another fawn-like pattern, refusing to rock the boat at all. By never complaining or even quietly enduring discomfort, these individuals ensure no one gets upset. This comes from learning that expressing needs or grievances led to worse outcomes, maybe big arguments or feeling unloved. Over time, being silent becomes nice behavior. It's praised as patience, but behind it is often conditioned fear. By bottling everything up, they're essentially saying, "I'd rather hurt myself than you be upset with me." That self-neglect is scary, but feels safe, which is why victims of trauma often adopt exactly this coping habit. Unconditional giving, never saying "me too." Finally, imagine the person who always offers help or things to others, but never asks for anything themselves. They give gifts, praise, time, and never take. They seem unbelievably generous and kind. Trauma explains this as yet another survival script. By giving without expecting reciprocation, they try to ensure nothing can be taken away from them. Childhood neglect or abuse can teach kids they must be the good one who never complains and always gives, or love will vanish. So in adulthood, they replicate that pattern, refusing to lean on others even when they need support. It feels admirable to be completely selfless, but experts say it's often driven by the fear of being a burden. The subconscious rule is, if I keep giving, maybe no one will hurt me or leave me. It's another twist on people-pleasing, never wanting to require anything in return, because asking might break the fragile safety net they built.